This is a Global News special presentation.
You see how close this is to all of the vehicles that are trying to flee the area.
This is Fort McMurray burning.
Thousands of people have been evacuated after extensive flooding in Fort McMurray.
It seems like you get hit from one side to the other, you know, it's devastating.
Government officials confirming the first presumptive case of COVID-19, the new coronavirus in our province.
The end of the pandemic will not be the end of the economic downturn.
5 years of heartbreak and devastation, fires, floods, financial collapse, and a pandemic.
It's going to be a part of our history, and let's not ignore that, but let's leave it there. Let's not let it define us.
But there is hope and new beginnings. This is a story of adversity and resilience. This is the story of Fort McMurray. The wildfire 5 years ago today was an historic event as nearly 90,000 people were forced from their homes. While most don't like to mark the anniversary, the scars in the city are still visible. Even more so are the signs of the strength it took to rebuild. In the next half hour, we will bring you those stories and how Fort McMurray is working to triumph over adversity. We begin with the fire and the journey to rebuild. Fletcher Kent was in Fort McMurray in 2016 and has gone back a few times since to follow the progress. Fletcher, how has this community recovered?
Well, Brianna, frankly, people there haven't had all that much time to recover. Most have now rebuilt from the fire, but then there were floods, a pandemic, and economic pain. It has been one thing after another, and each has changed the community. Each redefined the idea of Fort Mac Strong.
Symbols matter.
There was a Canadian flag.
A symbol that means a lot to Mayor Don Scott.
This flag flew during the fire and survived the fire.
The Legion, where it flew, was the only building in Waterways not to burn. Veterans signed the flag. It hung on the wall. 4 years later, floods drowned it. It was rescued, cleaned, and is now back.
That's another physical token of resilience of the community.
Not only to, how we're going to get through this, but how we're going to get through this together.
A lot of people have had a lot to get through.
The clear water was in my basement. So.
Last year, Cora Dion's house flooded. 5 years ago, she fled the fire. In between, she opened a pet store. But a weak economy shut it down.
I guess all in all, I'm doing fairly well.
It has been hard on everyone. But Dion has found the common struggle also bonds.
It was always a pretty tight-knit community before, but after the fire, I found that it's been even more so.
When she needs help, people are always there. It's the new Fort Mac Strong.
It was a catchphrase. I think it means more to us now. I think there's a perseverance that has evolved and a sense of community.
Now, the community has changed. 80% of the houses destroyed by the wildfire have been rebuilt. Of course, 20% have not. Many chose to leave.
Kind of felt like the city didn't want me anymore, like it just wasn't really meant to be.
Sarah Smith and her son Riker moved back to her hometown of Fairview. Smith's house burned in the wildfire. She fled while 9 months pregnant and gave birth to Riker while an evacuee. When she returned to Fort Mac, an accidental fire burned her new house. She left but says the community shaped her. She now works in finance, helping people through a pandemic.
It's helped me and with empathy and sympathy and really being able to understand what they're going through and connect with them on a personal level.
Fort McMurray shaped Riker, too.
He thinks it makes him strong. How do you feel about being the fire baby?
Pretty strong.
Pretty strong.
A collective strength reflected in all the symbols. It's why they're so important.
We've been through a lot of challenges, and they are still coming back strong, and they're going to keep on coming back strong.
Well, these are stories from only a handful of people. Everyone is different, but every time I have gone back to Fort McMurray, I am struck by seeing this evolving sense of community from so many other people in a place where they know now better than ever before what it means to be in it together. Brianna?
Thanks, Fletcher. We'll check back with you in just a few minutes. There have been ongoing plans to create a permanent place to reflect on the wildfire and honor those who didn't make it out. 15-year-old Emily Ryan and 19-year-old Aaron Hodgson. They were killed in a car crash on Highway 881 while evacuating. A wildfire memorial park is under construction, though the name of it hasn't been selected. That will be the second memorial in the city. The Pillars of Wood Buffalo was commissioned by Syncrude and Suncor and unveiled a few years ago at Keano College. It's a symbol of hope and the community's resilience. At night, it's a reminder that there is light after darkness. 5 years after the fire, we still don't know the circumstance behind its start. Since 2016, RCMP have said the fire was human-caused. In an update to Global News, police say their investigation is ongoing, but they still haven't determined if it was a criminal act. A dedicated tip line has been taken down due to the lack of activity, but RCMP are still asking anyone with information to reach out.
This is Highway 63. The fire seems to be burning across the highway. So people who are trying to go southbound on Highway 63 here to get away from all of this now are likely having to turn around.
This video shows just how dangerous it was as residents desperately tried to drive from the city on Highway 63. It became clear an alternate route out was needed. Two are being considered. The preferred one would run east while the other would go west. A benefits study on the East Clearwater route should be completed this spring. The regional municipality, province, and Red Cross are investing millions in other improvements. And some of the people enacting the changes know all too well the devastation fire can cause. The Fort McMurray wildfire left behind more than just ash. In its wake, recommendations, 14 of them in one report, meant to prevent this from ever happening again.
How do you turn that into something positive so that you don't repeat history?
For Fire Chief Jody Butts, the answer is acting on the suggestions. Everything from developing an evacuation plan to an investment in prevention programs.
You can see there's a lot of material that was removed off the forest floor.
Erin Fleming has been tasked with the latter. The local supervisor of the nationally recognized Fire Smart program, she oversees cleanup of the formidable forest and teaches people how to make their properties safer.
Store firewood away from the home.
Simple tasks like moving your wood pile away from your home or using composite material when replacing your deck.
If we can get even one property taking some Fire Smart action at home, it really could reduce the risk of wildfire spreading in the future.
In its first year, just 5 households signed up. After some retooling, 161 participated.
People look at me, they're like, you don't understand. You haven't been through this. Well, yeah, I have.
Fleming lost her home to the flames.
It's been so therapeutic for me personally to help me get over the 2016 wildfire.
The regional municipality is about to complete a community resilience strategy, requiring every decision council makes, from bylaws to budget, to include disaster prevention. Something that could be tested soon. Fort McMurray is coming off its 4th driest winter on record.
We usually see about 63% of wildfires caused by humans. But last year in 2020, that number rose quite significantly to 88%.
Still, the fire chief feels prepared, as much as one can, against Mother Nature.
I feel a lot more confident than we did before.
Preventative measures are not just being taken against fires. 2 significant floods have hit Fort McMurray since 2016. Now $250 million is being spent on mitigation. The push to prepare for more frequent natural disasters. Next.
Fort McMurray, Adversity and Resilience is brought to you by the Colin Bruce Mortgage Team. Visit colinbruce.ca.
You can see the icebergs have come right onto the course. For reference, I'm almost 6 feet tall and these things tower over me. Just as the city was rebuilding and recovering from the fire, a flood rushed in. 1 year ago, the annual river ice breakup forced water into more than 1,200 structures. Rick McDonald from the Fort McMurray First Nation lost his life, swept away while checking a trap line on the Athabasca River. In December, a report found the city's berm system was seriously flawed, leaving $228 million worth of damage. The flood was said to be a 1-in-100-year event, but now the city realizes the need to prepare for another this century.
This is home base.
As most of us prepare our gardens each spring, Carl Barish fills sandbags.
My son helped me do that.
1 year ago, he lost 3 properties to floodwater. He rebuilt, but because of the pandemic, we couldn't go into his house to see the progress. So we made do.
I'll take some pictures of the area that was originally demolished, including the stairway. There's still some evidence of final finish that I have to do.
Inside, his house looks like a home again. His neighbors can't say the same.
I'd say more than 60-70% aren't anywhere near there yet because it takes funds, and we did not get any. Most of us, or very few of us, got anything from insurance.
Hundreds of people did receive funding through the province's disaster recovery program. Barish's check coming just last month.
Having a disaster is incredibly expensive, so if we put the money up front to try to prevent and mitigate, then we can reduce those costs.
The regional municipality agrees. Now blue and green tubes line the creeks in the core. The temporary berms, part of the city's $10 million mitigation spend this year alone. $257 million will eventually be spent on permanent fixes, like structures meant to withhold a 1-in-200-year flood. That work is half complete.
These issues should have been addressed, decades ago. This is the council that's actually taken action.
Timely, with experts predicting natural disasters will happen more frequently.
Mitigation prevention as well has always been incredibly important, but I think increasingly it is.
Leaving Barish to continue his spring sandbagging.
We're doing what we need to do, but we also are aware that the town has got measures in place.
One of the most devastating losses in the flood was at the Wood Buffalo Food Bank. There was about 10 feet of water in the building, hundreds of thousands of pounds of food lost. Their vehicles, forklift, everything gone. The damage so significant, they've been forced into a temporary location until a new building is ready.
Everything is being compounded because now you got the effects of the fire that was psychologically a problem for a lot of us. And then you add in COVID kicking in, and then the flood happened, and then COVID is still going on.
More on mental health in just a few minutes, but food bank use tends to reflect when a city is struggling. In the last 10 years, there's been a nearly 600% increase in the demand for food bank hampers. The largest jump was after the fire, but when you put everything together, it has been relentless, making the need for a bigger space even greater. Fort McMurray and the RM of Wood Buffalo haven't been immune to the spread of COVID-19. They're suffering in this third wave. A state of local emergency was declared on April 26. There have been multiple outbreaks linked to oil sands work camps, and schools have switched to online learning.
Our largest industry has been battered for 5 years.
For years, Fort McMurray has been the economic engine of Alberta, the success of the oil sands pulsating through the province. But those beats have slowed, and the city, province, and energy industry find themselves in a world of trouble. Premier Jason Kenney warned of a fiscal reckoning, with Alberta's debt ballooning and a struggling energy industry. But for some, it may already be too late. Here again is Fletcher Kent.
Everything else okay?
Business owner Gareth Norris has become an expert at trying to make do.
Yeah, it's crazy. We haven't covered costs for a long time.
First there was the fire. Smoke contaminated his Irish pub, and he's still fighting with insurance. He did his own rebuild and reopened 3 years later to a struggling economy that saw 3/4 of his business vanish. And then COVID hit, taking 3/4 of what was left.
Doesn't make you sleep any better at night because those numbers just keep piling up, and that's the 3 a.m. wake up.
Downtown, similar problems from a different disaster.
And then whammo, flood hits, and, totally unexpected.
Last May, 30 centimeters of water filled Gary Harris's furniture store. He reopened for business just last month.
I don't know how much more the community itself can take. But, there's just one thing everybody keeps talking about how strong Fort McMurray is.
They bounce back, and they'll need to. The Chamber of Commerce says 10 to 15% of businesses have closed in the last year alone. Still, the region's mayor shares Harris's optimism, noting oil prices are recovering.
But I want to see gradual, steady growth in the immediate future. And I think as soon as we get through COVID, we're going to see a very, very strong economy in this region.
All right, Trista, is this it?
Signs of improvement already exist. Real estate is often an economic bellwether. In the first quarter of 2021, Fort McMurray saw more home sales than in any other first quarter since 2014.
They're selling in multiple offers. I'm starting to see like the house of cards where one person buys, who's buying another house, who's selling, who's buying another house, who's selling.
A sign of confidence in a community that has become pretty good at making do.
So much adversity is bound to have a serious impact on mental health. From PTSD to anxiety, the lasting effects of so much disaster are deep. We look at the demand for help and the work being done ahead.
I'm standing here right next to the highway. This is one of the neighborhoods that's under evacuation. The fire is now cresting the trees. We're going to have to be leaving here very, very soon. See how close this is?
As Fort McMurray residents and our crews left the city in 2016, no one knew what they would return to. Something that was certain, scenes like these are bound to be burned in a person's memory. Fletcher, the mental damage is so often lost when talking about the fire, but it's so important. You were in the middle of it, so at what point did the weight of this become real for you, and how did it affect you?
Well, first, Brianna, I don't think it even compares to the way it affected those who lived there, not even close. From that video, you could see that I saw the fire coming up over the hill. There was a clear sense of urgency, obviously a lot of adrenaline there as well, but in the end, I was just working. It didn't bother me, at least not at first. A week later, though, when I got home, I think it did. My youngest was 4 at the time. She ran up to me when I came through the door and said, "Daddy, Daddy, the fire didn't burn you." Then she grabbed me and she just wouldn't let go. I think it's at that point that I was able to take a step back and really see what the fire did and what it did to the people there. When my daughter, who only ever saw the pictures, could feel that upset, I was able to see in her eyes and feel in that hug just a little bit of the mental strain that must have weighed and likely still weighs heavily on the people who lived through the fire, as opposed to those of us who simply witnessed it. Now, joining us now to talk about the mental health toll of the fire is Amanda Holloway with the Canadian Mental Health Association in Fort McMurray. Thank you, Amanda, for joining us. I really do appreciate your time. First question, just how big of an issue is mental health right now in Fort McMurray?
I would say that mental health is all-consuming right now in Fort McMurray. You know, we're quickly approaching the anniversary of the fire. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and we're almost at 1 year anniversary from the flood. So there is a lot of things happening in our region, lots of conversation around mental health and the importance of placing mental health a priority.
How is it different today, right now, compared to what it's probably been like the last 5 years?
We have certainly demonstrated our capacity to be resilient and adaptable to many challenging situations. And I think despite our challenges, you know, despite the fact that there's still many people in active recovery from the fire, that we have certainly proven, I think, as a region, just how strong and resilient we can be.
Was there anything that surprised you in the last 5 years about how the people of Fort McMurray have handled everything that's been thrown at them?
I think it was evident even from the beginning of the fire that that sense of spirit and community. Oftentimes Fort McMurray, sometimes being an oil and gas town, we can have, you know, not some of the best images out in media about who we are in Fort McMurray or who lives in Fort McMurray, but it is truly one of the most amazing communities to live in.
Well, how do you think the attention to mental health issues have changed since the fire?
I think it really has put a light on the psychosocial impacts that a natural disaster can have. And again, there's no one size fits all when we talk about psychosocial supports that are needed post-disaster. And so our community has really been an example of the incredible amount of work that goes into recovery efforts and ensuring that you have a robust array of supports and services to support people across the entire spectrum when we talk about mental health services.
All right, Amanda, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Thanks, Fletcher. You can watch more with Amanda on our website. If you or someone you know is struggling, call Alberta's mental health helpline at 1-877-303-2642. For those in Fort McMurray, SOS, Some Other Solutions is a society for crisis prevention. They can be reached at 780-743-HELP. Both numbers are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Fort McMurray students have juggled all that with their most formative years. Ahead, the future of Fort McMurray as we meet a grade 12 student proving there is strength in struggle.
Fort McMurray, Adversity and Resilience is brought to you by the Colin Bruce Mortgage Team. Visit colinbruce.ca.
So what's next for Fort McMurray? Who better to ask than a grade 12 student? Louisa Pinto proves balancing the adversity and her future has been possible, and that lifelong lessons were learned in and out of the classroom.
Hi, my name is Lulu Pinto, and I'm a student at Holy Trinity Catholic High School. As of right now, I'm for sure going into nursing. I'm just trying to decide where. I really want to go either to Ontario or to Florida, and then after maybe I'll even pursue my career in the medical field. I have a scholarship opportunity for 2 schools in Florida. I've been playing volleyball ever since I was in elementary school. In grade 11 and 12, I was able to become team captain, as well as playing basketball and cheer and dance, and I've been a part of band as well, which is really fun. I really feel like I've missed out on a normal grad year, you know, all the grad activities with the rest of my class and everything, but I think it's about just making the best of it, and Trinity has really tried to put a positive turn on everything. The day that we did evacuate, it was like everything, the sky was black. It was like it was nighttime. And I just remember my mom calling me from school and she's like, let's go, we have to go, we have to evacuate. When I came back in grade 8, it was like, it was the last place I was before I evacuated. I think it was really important that the staff at the school and our principals, like what they did, they really tried to put a positive turn on our memories. As much as everything awful that has happened to us, Fort Mac has done a really good job at just bringing everyone together and just within the community itself and around the community and from outside of the province, from outside of the city. Everyone has really come together to help us and provide us with resources and with love. I'm hopefully going into the health sciences, and I know that's not going to be pretty easy, and I know I'm going to get beaten down and tore apart, but if anything, living in Fort Mac has taught me to get back up and to keep going, and that I'm able to conquer everything that I put my mind to.
A lesson of resilience Fort McMurray has proven time and time again, and one we can all rely on no matter the adversity we face. Thank you for joining us. Good night.